Hello, Mike, I was thinking, is one of those phrases that immediately grabs your husband's attention. It's on the same level as honey. We need to talk. Which usually signals that she's upset with you or has done something you won't like. Or do you think this dress looks good on me? Which is always a no-win situation. Sorry guys, but there's no escaping this. Either you tell her she's the most beautiful woman you've ever seen, or you try to be honest and face the consequences. Then there are statements like, if you love me, which means she knows you'll resist but wants you to do it anyway. I did it for you implies she knows she's asking a lot, but she wants to make it seem minor by highlighting her recent good deed. My personal favorite is it's worth your attention, usually accompanied by a display of cleavage or legs, or if it's really important, some touches and kisses. Most of these statements can be managed, but Mike, I was thinking, could probably be diverted by saying the first thing that came to mind. Congratulations, dear. There's always a first time. However, I don't like sleeping on the couch, so I kept my thoughts to myself. This time I had to stop her because her big idea almost killed any interest I had in being intimate with her. Yes. I'll gladly take the couch tonight. Our life has changed so radically. The kids are independent, we are financially stable, and we have no worries. But we're still stuck in the same daily routine we've had for the past 25 years. Wake up, go to work, come home, make dinner, kiss goodnight, go to bed, and repeat. I want something exciting in my life. Thinking about our monotonous routine, I propose traveling more on weekends. Day trips to nearby places can be fun. I suggested adding ballet, which she loves, and our local baseball team, which I enjoy. I mentioned the idea of buying a boat or a motorcycle, taking tennis lessons, dancing, joining a bowling league, visiting gardens, or exchanging books. These were all things we had dreamed of or considered over our time together. So I thought it would spark interest to add some excitement to our lives, since my beautiful wife felt down. All my suggestions failed, each one was rejected, until I half-jokingly proposed that instead of kissing every night and having sex once a week or two, we should switch and have sex every night and kiss goodnight once a week or two. I made it clear I was half serious. Imagine my surprise, honey, we're 48, and we haven't even had sex once a week or two. I know you want more, but it's so boring. Imagine my surprise. You're the only man I've loved and will always love, so I don't want you to be upset. I need you to listen to me. This couldn't be good. Emily never beat around the bush, she always got straight to the point. Something big was definitely brewing in her pretty head. You're also the only man I've made love to, and that makes me curious. I start to wonder what else is out there. You've always made me happy in bed, but Jessica says, there it is, Jessica. I could have guessed it. She was wildly fun, but also just plain wild. She was always up for anything involving nudity or intimacy. She was just 6 months away from her third marriage and already looking for loser candidate number 4. She made good money with each divorce and had a charming 5-acre property near the club, as well as a nearly equivalent bank account. She had 3 kids, 1 from each husband, and they all received child support from their wealthy fathers. Jessica had been to every nude beach in the country and many abroad. She knew the coolest cruises, the hottest clubs, the best adventures. She was the girl who could wear 6-inch heels to a church picnic without anyone batting an eye. She radiated passion, and she was my wife's best friend. And I'd be very wrong not to try with other men before it's too late. So I propose you start dating Jessica on Fridays and explore her world. It's the perfect time before I start looking old and saggy. Since the kids aren't home, no one will get hurt. No one will get hurt? My stomach churned with the idea of dinner spilling through the living room. Yes, no one will get hurt. What about me? Oh dear. Jessica said you might get jealous, but remember, I only love you and always will. But you had experiences with other girls before we met, so you know what that world is like. I only know you. I deserve the chance to try another flavor. Jenny, what if you like one of those guys so much you can't come back? What if you fall in love with someone else? What about me? I'll lose everything if you do that, and so will you. We have a great life, and we're both about to retire in a few years. We can travel, explore, and do it together. We're on the verge of our golden years, where we can rekindle those strong feelings we had in our youth before the kids came and turned us into full-time parents. What's in it for me? You know, even in a no-fault state, a man can be destroyed in a divorce if I even think about it. No. You don't understand. I never want to divorce you. I don't want to leave you, honey. I want those golden years to be amazing too. And even though Jessica says I could be very well off with a couple of divorces, I can't imagine growing old without you. I knew it would come to this because she always thought things through, and that would be her first argument. So I asked Chris to draft a contract for us that clearly stated what would happen if we divorced. Remember, I didn't want this at all. It was just to ease her mind. I read the contract. Chris was my partner. We ran a small, well-organized law firm that provided excellent general advice, specializing in nothing in particular but practicing everything. Chris took good care of me in that contract. The property division left my wife with the house and its contents, but gave me our winter apartment, the beach house, and my fishing cabin. Financially, everything was fair, so no complaints. Jenny had a good salary and always wanted to keep her money separate. We would have our own bank and investment accounts, and each would have our own pension, so everything was separate. I paid off the mortgage 2 years ago, so no spousal support was required. And the kids had college funds that would easily cover their education and much of graduate school, if they chose that path. In reality, everything was very neat and clean. Chris deserved a thank you for lunch. However, many questions would arise about why she couldn't warn me. Of course, there was client confidentiality, but we were partners. Wasn't there a conflict of interest? I thought so. But Chris was also my lawyer in this matter, so I let it go, maybe even turning that lunch into dinner. Hell, Chris and I were great work partners, but every spare minute we flirted like silly teenagers. Wait a minute, there it is. What the hell? What about me? I should have asked myself that question. Chris flirts with me, clients flirt with me, neighbors flirt with me, and women at the club flirt with me. Hell, her best friend Jessica openly propositions me in front of Jenny. Fine. My wife wants to play with new meat, let her play. She wants to see what's out there. Fine. Does she want to compare me to other guys? Fine. I'm not sure she realized what she was doing by throwing me into such a rich environment. I'm not sure she realized that Chris' contract was drafted in a way that the door was also open for me. I signed every copy just below her name and smiled like a cat getting cream. Without saying a word, I handed her a copy and filed mine in my document file, which I securely locked. Okay, dear. Now you're a free woman. You can play as you wish. I only ask 2 things don't play in our bedroom. We must keep the marriage bed just for you and me, and no slippery seconds. I want 48 hours between your last night and our next. Fair, Teddy. I like that. But remember, we're not just going to have sex, we're going to make love. No, Jenny. Making love is for 2 people who love each other and only between them. If you start making love, it will be with someone else. And that will be the end for us. As long as our relationship is open, we'll just have sex. No, honey. You're wrong. Part of the whole cuckolding culture is romance. When the woman comes home and makes love to her submissive husband. And slippery seconds are a big part of that. You need to accept my extramarital relationships to show me you love me enough to let me explore with other men, knowing I'll come back to you. Cuckolding culture? No, honey, that's not going to work. Read your contract carefully. There's nothing describing our relationship as your marriage to a cuckold. A cuckold is a man whose wife has sex with other men while he stays home, faithful or dedicated. Sorry, honey, I can't tolerate that. In fact, I almost threw up my lunch when you suggested this today. I have no interest in sharing with you or watching. What's described in your contract is an open marriage. We're both free to have as much fun as we want, and there are no rules or guidelines in our agreement. So yes, we're both free agents with no restrictions. She took her contract and read it carefully. When she realized what she had done, her shoulders slumped. She knew the seed of curiosity had already taken root in her head. She also knew she was considering retracting this idea because it wasn't exactly what she had planned. But her curiosity had grown so much that it needed to be explored. If she didn't do it this way, sooner or later she would cheat on me. But now, there were new seeds. Now I had something to lose too. She also had to risk that I would find someone else to love. She was also risking everything. The doorbell rang. Jenny slid out of my office to answer, and I followed her. Jessica burst through the door. So he agreed? Jenny gave me a look. Jessica turned to me. So, Jessica, you take my wife every Friday night? Jessica looked surprised. She probably expected me to come out furious, concerned about how I would react to Jenny's proposal. She didn't say a word, just nodded. This will cost you this time. If you have Fridays, I get Sundays. Both women were stunned. I took Jessica's face in my hands and kissed her deeply, with passion. Without even looking at Jenny, I lifted Jessica and carried her to my office. There I bent her over the soft arm of my leather sofa and took her as I had always fantasized. We spent 2 hours in the office devouring each other. Jenny was right. A bit of fresh excitement inspired and ignited something in me that hadn't been lit since high school. Jessica was quite loud, and less than an hour later I heard Jenny's car start and drive away. I didn't care. When my wife returned, Jessica had already showered and dressed, and I was grilling steaks on the barbecue. Jessica and I didn't manage to get Jenny to talk during dinner, but the two of us enjoyed an endless flow of conversation, sweet smiles, and tender touches. When it was time to leave, I kissed Jessica with as much tenderness as I had always kissed Jenny, in a way that would make her melt. "See you next Sunday, dear," I said. "Maybe, but you never know. Maybe you have a date on Friday." She smiled and left. I smiled and went to watch the Sunday game. Jenny cried while washing the dishes. She turned to me in bed. I held her. She wanted more, but I reminded her it had to be 48 hours to avoid the slippery seconds. She turned away, crying, and seemed to fall asleep, though only until morning. Unlike her, I slept like a baby. Monday, as always, Jenny left early for work. She was a real estate agent, and the early bird gets the worm. As always, she left me coffee and breakfast. The newspaper, as always, was on the table. Everything was as usual, except for the smile on my face. I have to give credit to my wife. A bit of extramarital activity really made me think. I loved my wife. Jessica was undoubtedly incredible. She knew how to treat me, but nothing compared to making love with the one. I might have swapped roles with Jenny, but I didn't like it. I wanted a woman who only wanted one man, me, as always. Chris smiled from ear to ear when I walked into the office. I told her the whole story and then invited her to dinner. She said she knew I would understand what she left for me in the contract and laughed like a schoolgirl when I told her about Jessica. She liked my rule of the slippery seconds and that our bed was sacred. She accepted the dinner invitation, but on the condition that we go to her house. That same night we went home together. Dinner was excellent, the desserts fantastic, the wines amazing, and Chris was on fire. We went back to her house and had sex for hours. As we lay in bed, breathing heavily, she told me she had dreamed of being with me for years. But your marriage was so important to you that I would never have done anything. I know you love Jenny, but when she had this crazy idea, I couldn't resist, and took my only chance to be with you, Teddy. Tomorrow we'll be friends and partners again, but today I enjoyed being your woman. Maybe Chris. But if she delays, she may not have anyone to return to. Honey, if that happens, I want to be first in line. I told Jenny she was crazy for doing this. You were too good a catch to let go. If she loses, you'll be mine. We kissed, and I went home. Jenny was asleep, so I showered and went to sleep in the guest room. However, she was waiting for me at breakfast. "Teddy, so, Jessica says you're the best sex she's ever had." I told her the night became boring, and there were times I just wanted to finish quickly. I didn't feel the effort was worth the results. Today she told me I'm an idiot. She also said if I lose you, she plans to make you hers, even if it means losing her fortune in a divorce. Teddy, can we stop this? It was really stupid. I just can't stand the idea of you making love to Jessica, and suddenly I see my proposal from another perspective. At first I wanted to accept her proposal, but I needed to make sure her wild thoughts were gone. Besides, I was on my way. After years of making love once a week or two, I'd had sex twice in 2 days. Jessica was a little brown-haired beauty with a pleasant disposition who moved as if she could read her partner's mind. Chris was tall, voluptuous, and blonde. Yes, I felt liberated. I wanted to play in this world. It was wonderful. Jenny, there's a reason for all this. You had a desire you couldn't contain. You had to act on it. That desire will return, and eventually, you'll cheat on me. I prefer everything, to be honest, so go ahead and get your samples. Get this out of your system, and let's see how I handle it. If you go through this month and realize you still miss me and want to come back to just us two, we'll do it together. But first, finish this. I don't want to hear about it later. If you give up this idea and we come back, and I catch you cheating on me, I'll divorce you and use this contract against you as a big hammer. She reluctantly agreed. That night she turned to me again, but it hadn't even been 48 hours since Jessica was screaming in my office, and the news about Chris had left her stunned. She cried again and couldn't sleep until my forbidden body hugged her. Maybe Thursday night? For me, environmental day is golf day. I only work Wednesday morning, and when the weather is good, I go golfing. But that day, the weather was horrible. It rained all day. I saw Carla's SUV on the shoulder and parked next to it. She had a flat tire and was struggling with the jack. I jumped out to help her and quickly changed the tire. We were both drenched, and she insisted I come in for hot coffee and lunch. I accepted. She made terrible coffee, but what was incredible was her body. She took off her jacket as soon as the coffee maker was done, and my jaw dropped. The white blouse she wore was soaked through by the rain and clung to her skin. I could clearly see the lace design of her bra and the shape of her breasts. Calm down, man. You're married, I told myself. I laughed. My stomach laughed too. I stayed in shape, and if I hadn't, that would have ruined the moment. After calming down, I explained my wife's crazy plan. Carla laughed. She also had a flat stomach, so she didn't jiggle, though she might have if she weren't in shape. She calmed down too. Do you know how amazing a woman's skin feels when it's wet? It was like a hug. We quickly stripped off the wet clothes and ran to her shower. We soaked under the hot water and then warmed up in her bed. We warmed up again, this time emotionally. Then I got dressed and went home. Carla hadn't had nights like that in months since her divorce. Teddy, I hope you and Jenny improve your relationship. I really like you both. You've been wonderful neighbors. But if things don't work out, please think of me. I could fall for a guy like you. It was both a plea and an offer. She begged me to visit whenever I could, as long as I was honest with Jenny. I didn't say no. Jenny was waiting for me. I was late for dinner, but it was fine. She hadn't prepared anything. We had a good conversation, and she admitted she had her first win. However, she was very disappointed. She showed a house to a client, and he made an offer. They negotiated over the phone, and by the end of the day, the owner accepted his offer, and the deal was almost closed. They did most of the work in the business center of his hotel, and then celebrated with drinks and food. He invited her to continue drinking champagne in his room. She told him she had enough champagne and just wanted to have fun. As soon as they entered the room, they started frantically undressing. He pushed her onto the bed. He was clearly inexperienced and had no idea about her hot spots. She tried to imagine pleasant things to feel passion with him, but nothing worked. Teddy, I barely felt it. The night was so horrible. When I got home, I was so angry with myself. He was so proud of having lasted so long, and he started bad-mouthing you. Have you ever had a night that lasted this long? Do you like this? Your man can't take you where I am now, right? He continued even after we were done. Finally, I told him to shut up about you. I told him he had no chance against you. I told him you knew I was having fun today, so he won nothing. He looked so upset, so I told him he was sweet, that I enjoyed our time together, and then wished him the best with his move. I even offered to invite his wife to dinner. Maybe we could switch places. You should have seen him stammering. We laughed about it, and that was the first good moment we shared. She knew I had been with Carla. My car was parked there when she passed Carla's house, and since it was just across the street and 2 houses down from ours, she saw me coming home. I want you back now. I have to wait until Friday to test you. It's really unfair. A man comes home to his wife every day for many years, takes care of her, mows the lawn, and works in the garden, holds her hand when her mother dies, she holds him when his father dies. They bring each other chicken soup when they're sick and share the responsibility of raising the kids. He's here every day. Suddenly, the wife says this is boring. You keep up the daily routine, and I'll have sex with someone else for fun, because you're too tired from daily life to keep me interested. Jenny, this isn't fair. I still want you back. You haven't lost me, but an idiot is not a fair sample. Scratch your itch, but you still have no right over me. Carla will have 48 hours on Friday, but some of us will definitely be happy Friday night, and I have a date with Jessica on Sunday. Looks like next Tuesday is your day. Well, see. She smiled. Thursday, I had been with beautiful women 3 days out of the last 4. 3 women told me if my marriage failed, they would be waiting. I had a wife who was recovering but still couldn't be a reliable partner for me. I needed a break, though I felt quite happy. That night, while closing the office, a woman walked in. Chris had an appointment to pick up her car from the shop, so I agreed to attend to her potential client. Mary, our exceptional office manager, had left a few hours earlier, leaving me alone with a tall, dark-skinned woman with olive skin. To my surprise, she took off her coat. She wore a tight sweater dress clinging to her body, with a high slit revealing the tops of her lace stockings. High heels completed the look so well that I found myself looking into her deep, dark eyes. "I came for advice on a domestic matter," she said in the most beautiful, sexy contralto voice I had ever heard. "My advice: divorce him and run away with me," I responded calmly. She kept looking into my eyes until I saw them start to sparkle. She began to laugh, and soon we were both laughing. I told her I was about to leave, but if she hadn't had dinner yet, we could talk over dinner. She didn't say no. We discussed her case. She suspected her husband was cheating but couldn't prove it. She was very upset with the situation and wanted to protect herself in case he left suddenly. I gave her some advice on how to protect her financial assets, close joint credit lines, withdraw half of their joint savings, place the money in her own account, and hide some family heirlooms like jewelry, art, and silver where he couldn't find them. I explained how to track his actions by hiding a GPS in his car, activating Phone Finder on his iPad and phone, and even tracking phone usage. I connected her with a detective agency if she wanted to spy on their house or cars or follow him. I suggested she find a friend or relative to stay with if things went bad, and suggested she keep a diary of suspicious events. "What do you think about a revenge night?" she asked, reaching out to take my hand. With her other hand, she unbuttoned another button on her blouse, revealing more of her ample cleavage. I squeezed her extended hand with both of mine. It's a very tempting proposition, especially considering my current marital problems. But now, although you haven't officially hired me, you're my client, and it would be a conflict of interest to have revenge sex. You're fired. I had to laugh at that. Then I have nothing to lose. But before we proceed, I want you to be sure this is really what you want. A revenge night may feel good at first, but tomorrow morning you might feel guilt, thinking you're as bad as your husband. And if you're wrong about his infidelity, there's no going back. You'll be responsible for the breakup of your marriage and possibly guilty of the divorce he initiates. Is that what you want? Her heavy sigh answered my question. I watched her beautiful face as she pondered her next step. Can I rehire you? It will be an honor. But if I help you divorce him and your marriage doesn't improve, we'll go out every night for a month when it's all over. I'll consider this promise as a guarantee. I left the pub feeling pretty good. I was proud of how I handled this with dignity and class. On the way home, I stopped at a store to buy another bottle of wine. If I was going to spend the night at home, I could have a few glasses. When paying, I heard a familiar voice. "So, Lisa told me you and Jenny had some sort of arrangement, and she had never seen anyone handle it like that." I turned around and saw Tina, smiling at me. Tina was one of Lisa and Jenny's friends. She was as wild as Lisa, but played much harder. She was the girl who indulged anyone who pampered her first. No, not just a dinner and expensive dates. It required jewelry, expensive shoes, furs, and paintings. You could date Tina for a whole year, but stay clothed until you took her shopping or gave her a box of pearls or a set of diamonds. I'm sure the dress she wore cost at least $1,000, though it lacked fabric both at the hem and the neckline. Her shoes were certainly in the same price range, and her heels were worth every penny, elevating her firm and beautiful calves. The diamond earrings, pearls on her neck, and a hat that probably cost as much as my car completed the outfit. Well, Tina, I think only she could know for sure. I guess she also told you about my wife's brilliant idea that our marriage should be open after all these years. Yes, Teddy, she told me. So, now that you're free to play, how about you play with me, darling? What concerns me is your reputation. My reputation? Darling, I'm no wilder than Lisa, and you started with her. What's so special about me? Okay, Tina, you told me all about your habits last summer. You trick guys until they're completely hooked on the idea of sleeping with you, and then you take them to Tiffany's or Neiman Marcus for an expensive shopping session before they can close the deal. I just don't want to leave you a tip, like your dates usually do. So, if you want to know if Lisa's story was accurate, you'll come with me to the Hilton right now. When we get there, you'll give me your pearls and your diamond earrings as a tip, and then I'll spend the night with you. She hesitated and grabbed her pearl necklace. It was really beautiful, and the diamonds matched perfectly. If you're as great and hot as Lisa says, you can keep the shoes. The Hilton was quite cozy, and the breakfast was wonderful. I arrived quite late at the office, but I had no morning meetings. There were a dozen messages from Jenny on my phone. I texted her saying everything was fine and that I would see her over the weekend. Chris enjoyed the story and quickly noted that I looked like a cat that had lapped up the cream. Friday, I came home late. Jenny had already gone out with Jessica and Tina for a girls' night. Jenny left me a note. She was very upset that I hadn't come home the previous night and that I wasn't there to say goodbye. She felt I wasn't supporting her needs in this project and that we needed to have a serious conversation when she got back. Since I didn't have the courtesy to call her the night before, she wouldn't call that night. She hoped I enjoyed not knowing where my wife was, but it was fair game and I needed to learn the lesson. Well, she taught me. Now I could expect nights hanging around the house, pacing back and forth, worrying about the outcome of her date. After years of marriage, my only woman no longer brought me peace. Maybe once a week we made love, and that was perfect for me. But now, 5 different women in 5 nights, all eager, most offering to take Jenny's place if this experiment resulted in a breakup. Now that I knew variety really was the spice of life, there was no chance I would spend my Friday nights suffering over the one woman who rejected me last week. Ironically, the love of my life was now the only woman rejecting me. Sleeping with her now seemed a distant memory. If I had my way, at least 48 more hours would have to pass. I decided to go to the city. My kids had introduced me to alternative rock music, and Radio City had a concert with 3 great bands. I got an excellent seat and settled into the front row of the balcony, right by the aisle. Quickly, I found myself surrounded by a group of attractive 20-somethings. Sure, they were adults, but at my age, they were kids. They teased me a bit for being out of place, but the girl who joked about how I had missed the Guy Lombardo concert had such a sweet smile that I couldn't help but smile back. When the first band started playing, I got up and started singing and dancing with everyone. Yes, I knew every word to every song all the bands played that night. I reached a new level of cool. Sure, buying some beers helped, and when they passed me a funny cigarette, I didn't refuse. Somehow, I managed to dance all night in the aisles with everyone, and as we left, the girl who teased me grabbed my hand, declaring I was going with them. "I'm too old to have fun with you kids." "I know, but we think you've got another round in you." She rated me perfectly, and I was rated for someone else. In the end, the guys left with the girls, but that night there were more women in the group than men. By the 4th round, there were only 3 of us left. At least the drinks got cheaper. After the first sip, the girl who teased me took my face and pulled me into a deep, juicy kiss. She tasted like a margarita. Her friend declared she deserved attention too, and when the first girl stepped back to catch her breath, the second continued where she left off. That set the tone for the night. Their apartment was just a block away. I don't remember how we got there. I remember clothes flying off bodies, and the bodies they came off were incredible. When my boxers went flying, the girls looked at each other, then rolled their eyes and pounced on me like animals in a waterhole after a month-long drought. I had forgotten how soft and elastic young skin could be, but it was enough to bring back my memories. The smiles would last a long time. When I left, I found Tina's gifts in my pockets, not in my pants. I left those on the kitchen table at home, for Jenny to find and cry a little. The earrings looked wonderful on the girl who teased me, and the pearls fit her friend perfectly. They were delighted and surprised at the same time. Now I was a good Robin Hood, seducing the rich and giving it to the young and needy. Jewelry really is a girl's best friend. They convinced me to spend Saturday strolling through the museums in Central Park, and Saturday night at a blues bar in Brooklyn, followed by another night of intense intimacy. I kissed them goodbye late Sunday morning and headed home. To see, yes, I'm sure you thought I was going to say Jenny, right? Never. Sunday was Jessica's day. I wasn't sure how I felt about Jenny at that moment. She was more than just a roommate. I still loved her, of course. We had spent a lifetime together, raised our kids, had good times, and helped each other through the tough times. But when it came to inserting tab A into slot B, as directed in the instructions, my tab had no interest in slot B. In fact, slots C and D also held very little attraction. I just didn't feel inclined to consider her a partner in bed. Could this mean that my wife's desire to experiment and open our relationship had led her straight to the friend zone? When I got home, she was waiting in the living room. Obviously, things were not going well in paradise. Jenny was very upset that I hadn't been home all Saturday, and had been boiling with rage since she got back Friday night. "You need to seriously explain everything. Hi to you too. How were your weekends?" "I slept out Friday night, thank you, and finally found a man who knows how to treat a woman. If you want to know my feelings, I really wanted to share them with you, but you weren't home. Who are you playing with? Girls too young? Incredible. Well, that was pretty clear and actually quite direct. Jenny started speaking angrily, mumbling nonsense about how things should have been. I wasn't really listening, but she didn't stop. She prattled on about the natural flow of infidelity and how it should have brought us closer, talking about our experiences when it was all over, and how I should have been home thinking about this, to create anticipation for our reunion and make our sex much stronger. A lot of I is enough to completely lose the male audience's attention. Actually, the male guide recommends that we start thinking about something completely unrelated, with the help of a stopwatch, and insert a reasonable "yes, dear" every 90 seconds to convey agreement and maintain harmony. It's long enough to complete an entire fantasy, preferably involving someone with a large bust, long legs and loose hair, lying next to us in bed without clothes. But during this particular speech, what brought me back to reality was, "You should have." Now, if there is one key phrase that can ruin any argument, it's "you should have." There are a few acceptable responses to the statement "you should have." A man can ignore it and return to his happy dream world, where a young Audrey Hepburn seduces him in her den to show him her perfect body for his pleasure. Not a bad option. Or he can choose a stronger response that challenges his wife's assertion, such as, "Since when should I?" which questions her authority and denies any agreement to relinquish control. Or, "When did we decide that?" which asserts his part in decision-making. The final trump card, recommended by the Idiot's Guide to Controlling and Ignoring the Wife, includes increasingly strong responses, from "I never said that," which is always risky because she might have evidence, to "I never intended to," which could be the final argument if said firmly, but could also mean no sex for at least a month. Or one could resort to that old phrase men have used since Cro-Magnon times when dealing with a complicated wife: "I'm so upset by your statement that you have the right to determine what I should do. If you don't shut up now, I'll give all your shoe collection to my dog." That day I chose the classic two-word version, "you should." Jenny was a little baffled. I don't think she enjoyed this encounter any more than my reaction to her decision to cuckold me. I wondered how she thought this attempt to take control through complaints or harassment would work better than her announcement that she was ending our exclusive relationship. I watched as the wheels turned in her head. She realized she had no valid argument. She wanted out of the situation so desperately that she tried to make a legal agreement to protect herself from losing everything in a divorce. She had lost control where she wanted it, failed to regulate my access to sex, and ensured my weak and reluctant cuckold status under her spell. Meanwhile, she discovered that the man she had tired of was very desired by other women. The trump card, her access to sex, which should have become extremely valuable through rationing, suddenly became available to him every day from various sources. At the same time, her access to tender love sessions with him was no longer available and was given to her friend, neighbor, and stranger half her age. To make matters worse, all her new lovers let her know how jealous they were of her, that she had enjoyed a monopoly over such a man for all those years. They admired his tender touch, his handsome face, his strong arms, his great dignity, his patience in bed, his intuitive way of giving them what they needed, and his stamina as a lover. They were even impressed by his virility. Imagine a man his age spending a vigorous night in bed with different eager women each night that week. He had spent the last 2 consecutive nights with 2 girls half his age, and yet there he was, ready for his Sunday date with his wife's best friend. "Can we change our mind?" she asked. "I'm listening. I was wrong. Do you think you're going to let me go that easily, right? Never. It's a pretty big deal." She paused, thinking. She knew she was on the right track. She knew she was ready to offer to go back to how things were before she decided we needed to talk. However, there was no chance I would go back to how things were. If this could happen once with a warning, it could happen in the future without a warning. "I think you're worried about our future. You didn't expect this. If we burn this contract, I'll accept a new one that says everything you want. If you take me back as the only woman, like it was before." I sat and thought about her words, or at least pretended to. Of course, I wanted her back as the only woman. That was all I ever wanted. I knew I should have been hurt by what she did. I was hurt, it just didn't hurt as much anymore. I mean, Jessica, Chris, Carla, my olive-skinned client, Tina, the concert girl, and her wonderful friend helped me. Yes, a week with 7 different beautiful women really healed my broken heart, but I planned to make Jenny work for it. Pleasure below the belt on demand, in any position I want, anywhere, as long as it doesn't cause public embarrassment or danger. She blinked. That kind